Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Cangialosi. I'm the chairman and co-founder of Betamore, and today it is my honor and privilege to bring Founder City's third session to you live with my guest, Mac Conwell from RareBreed Ventures, who I'm super psyched to join me today. We'll get into it in a couple things I've got to just do on the housekeeping side is everybody who the sessions, we're building the plane at Founder City as we fly it. So we're adding sessions weekly. We just want to take the time to make sure we curate the best content for you. All the details are at foundercity.com. I wanted to give a quick shout out to all of our supporters, all of our sponsors. The response has been incredible, and we love you for supporting the mission here. Also, our partners at Fitzy. It's always great to be working with you as well. I do want to do a quick announcement to really push the pitch competition. We're doing a lot of curated sessions. We're doing a lot of panels. You saw Yair, Flickr, Smart Logic raising institutional capital. Last week, we did Andrew Friedman talking about building a high-performance culture. Next week, we have the CEO of Olive, Sean Lane, also Betamore co-founder, being Fireside Chat. But we're also doing a pitch competition in the spirit of connecting the investment community to the entrepreneurship community. So the way to do that is to go to foundercity.com and apply on thumbraise.com, our partner. It's a virtual mobile app or tablet app that you can actually give your pitch, submit your deck, and you can actually you'll be engaging and interacting with the investment community. And then, of course, for our pinnacle event, which we're going to have a drive-through pitch competition in the parking lot. We'll get more on that later. So today, one other comment, universities and incubators. If you are a startup that's affiliated with an incubator or a university, there's a discount code to apply. So make sure you find that out. And if you have any questions, you can just go to foundercity.com. Everything is there. So today, I have the pleasure of talking with a very good friend of mine who I've known, my God, I think 9 years. It's going on 9 years. I met him back in 2012. He was a aggressive entrepreneur and just hustling his way. We met at a panel, I think it is, on EdTech or something like that here in Baltimore. And it's just been a true pleasure to watch his journey evolve from a startup founder all the way through managing partner of a venture firm. And so today we're going to talk to Mac Conwell of RareBreed Ventures. Mac, great to see you.
It's great to be here, Greg.
I'm so glad you're doing this with us. It's awesome. I love this story. So we're going to talk today. We're going to cover a bunch of things. We're going to talk about Mac's story all the way up to when we met initially at Betamore, 2012. Your journey as a founder to the managing partner of a venture fund.
Yep.
I want to talk about your engineering experience, your computer, all your background. You know, Given 2 is the company I believe that we first met up. You went on to work at Tedco.
Yes.
We'll talk about your early thoughts on the Builders Fund that still is rocking today, and all the way up through spinning out, I believe it was last year.
Yep, last September.
And launching RareBreed Ventures, which is awesome. And how many LPs do you up to now?
I think as of today, we're at like 113.
Awesome. Over 3 million raised already, right?
Yep. 3.5 million raised so far.
That's crazy. I mean, that's awesome. And I'm excited. And I told you yesterday, I'm making a play. I'm going to be an LP.
I appreciate it.
So let's just start. People love the narrative. People love stories. And I'm trying to extract those stories from all the sessions, at least that I do, and as well as everyone's trying to do. But I want to start with, let's talk about the Mac story, the early days, your journey into technology. What got you going?
Yeah, so I'm from Baltimore, grew up here, ended up going to Woodlawn High School. But when the thing for me, my engineering got started in middle school, I went to this magnet school, and I had this middle school teacher, Mr. Davis, who I didn't recognize at the time through 8. And so middle school was in like 1996. And he had us building robots out of Legos. Like, this is pre-Lego Mindstorm.
Nice.
Pre all that. And so, by the time I'm in 8th grade, I'm doing like robotics competitions and things. And so I really thought that I was going to be a robotics engineer. Like, where I thought I was going to end up. And so I go through high school. I went to Woodlawn because they had a pre-engineering magnet program. Get to college and get to Morgan State. And I tell them, like, hey, I want to build robots. But I didn't spend time to figure out what majors were. Yeah. And so somebody just said, oh, you want to do computer science? They have a robotics club. I was like, all right, perfect.
That's awesome.
Then I got there and I'm like, it's not really what they do. But I took my first class and it wasn't hard. And then I looked up how much computer scientists made at the time. And I was like, oh, this is my major.
There you go.
And so that's how I got
So it's a
into this.
Mr. Davis inspired in the 6th to 8th grade with robotics, and he was a software engineer turned teacher, and inspired Mac to just go out and explore technology and STEM and all the way through Morgan State. So what was it like there at Morgan State? You did all 4 and did computer science degree?
So no, I didn't finish school. Okay. So I got to Morgan, was doing really well in my sophomore year. I got an internship with the DOD, got a top secret clearance, right? And so I'm working for the government. I'm learning about things, and I'll never forget this.
I did forget about that. You did do a little time there.
Yes. And so my first project I had to do, my first student, rotation, I was working in the office where they were doing Perl and Python. Mm-hmm. Granted, this is in like 06, so Python's not a thing yet, right?
Yeah.
As they asked
early
me,
Python.
This is early Python. So they asked me, like, which one do you want to learn? I was like, I'll do Python. I'll never forget this. I was sitting there in the office one day, and we're working with crazy amounts of data, doing really complicated equations. I'm sitting here having a conversation with my coworker, and I'm trying to talk to him about this project we're working on. I'm giving him some advice and helping him with his code. And I remember looking at him thinking, I'm making the equivalent of $32,000 a year because I'm in the student program, and you're making 80. And the only difference between the two of us is you work full time and I don't. That was the moment college died for me in my mind. Yeah. And so a year later, I dropped out of school because Northrop Grumman offered me a job making more money than I thought was possible.
Tell us about that. I mean, clearance.
It was really
obviously you can't tell us what you did, but
but it was really odd.
Yeah,
it was odd because I didn't understand the value of having a security clearance. Because they interviewed me for one job, and they told me that the client wanted somebody more senior, and that was a Python coding job. Uh-huh. And then they brought me back for a job I didn't apply for to be a DBA, and I didn't have any database experience. And they basically just asked me, do you want the job? I was like, I don't care if I have experience. They're like, oh, no, we'll teach you this. We can get there. Do you want the job? I was like, of course I want the job. Wow. And so that's how I got my first job. They asked me how much I wanted. I told them a dollar amount, and they gave me $10K more because they're like, yeah, we can do better than that. And I was confused.
Right. You're like
what is happening right now?
What's going on here?
But I took that time. So I had 3 weeks before I started the gig. And so I started teaching myself MySQL. And so by the time I got there, within 2 months of being there, they're like, oh, yeah, you're fine. You don't need to take any training. You're good. You got your thing. And that kind of started this career of me being in government contracting, where I became known as the guy who would just take on any project. So it didn't matter what it was, or what it had to do, I would do it. I've done everything from reverse engineering to hardware simulation to building websites to building apps to all kinds of stuff.
Utility player.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and literally, is probably the best background of experience for moving into entrepreneurship because, like I said earlier, build the plane while you fly. Yeah. That's what we do.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. And I got really good at starting stuff. I got really good at being somebody who could start something. If you had an idea, I could make the idea come to life. And that worked out really well for my future. And I guess the transition there from being in corporate to entrepreneurship was the student program I was part of with the government. There was about 300 students. Of those 300 students, about 30 of us were black. And so all the black kids hung together. Mm-hmm. But that became my core group of friends through my early 20s. Yep. But they were all electrical engineers or software engineers who either went to historically black colleges or went to Ivy Leagues. Mm-hmm. It was all. And that was my core group of friends. And one of them was a guy by the name of Patrick Jackson. Uh-huh. He's a CTO of a company called Disconnect. It's a VPN company in the Valley today. But he was the first person I met who was obsessed with being the black Mark Zuckerberg. He wanted to be Mark Zuckerberg. He's the reason why I learned PHP, because he kept telling me how Facebook was made out of PHP and MySQL. So everybody had to learn it because he wouldn't shut up about it. I mean, he started making iPhone apps in 07. Wow. Like early days of this stuff. And I think it was 2009, he quit his job and moved to San Francisco because some ex-folks from Google gave him money. Didn't realize he was talking about getting investors or that he was starting a startup. It was just he created a business because we can build. This is what we do. And so because of him, a group of us, 6 or 7 of us, all started, thinking about building businesses or starting companies. And so me and 2 of my best friends got together and we started our first company in October of 2009. And that's the beginning of the entrepreneurship thing.
Wow. I mean, just what a wealth of experience too, just different type of stuff. And, going from, just taking your journey through the whole sequence out to Northrop and to, actually starting your first company. Let's talk about that too, because that was 2009. We met in 12, I believe.
Yeah.
So were you on startup number 2?
No, I was still on startup number 1 because
that was given too.
It was originally called No Bad Gift.
No Bad Gift.
NoBadGift.com, and we changed the name to Given To. And what happened was,
just thoughts, man, bringing back a lot of memories. It's a lot.
So we can't. So maybe it was 2010. Maybe it was October 2010 we started doing. But like we started working on. We basically spent a year and a half of just building because we were 3 engineers.
Yep.
So we just figured
you guys were all just coding.
We just figured if we could build something really cool, people would use it. And then we got to this point where we had no customers and we had like a ton of code and a ton of functionality and this really cool product with nobody using it. And so we were like, okay, apparently we need to figure out how to market. Well, we don't have any money for marketing. So where do we get money? Maybe we need to find these people called investors. Where do you go to find investors? I have no clue. And so a friend of mine invited us to this event one night. Mm-hmm. And from that event, we got invited to other events and other events. And so next thing I know, I'm starting going to these events. Good things are happening. And my team's like, hey, Mac, every time you seem to go out to these events, you're meeting people and good stuff are happening.
That's right.
You should just do that. Why don't you be CEO and take that on? So that's how I ended up becoming CEO of the company. And that's when I started learning the value of networking, because at the time, I didn't know what networking was.
Man, I mean,
I was just trying to figure
you
it
were
out.
all over the place. I mean, you went to everything. I used to always remember saying to you, and Mac, just keep hustling, man, keep hustling. That's right. And we met actually at one of those panels.
Yes.
I believe it was on EdTech, because it was, like I mentioned earlier. And then you just appeared, and you were like one of the first entrepreneurs to come into our old location over at 1111 Light Street.
Yep.
You and I would rap, all the time about customer acquisition, product market fit. It sounds like you took that journey of, having the technical co-founding team, spending a lot of time on the product, but, missing that other part of like, we got to actually make sure people are going to use this. There's a product market fit, validate it, et cetera. Wow, how much we've learned since those days.
Yeah, I mean, learned a lot since those days. But here's the thing Greg won't tell you, right? So I started, going to these events and getting to know the who's who of the Baltimore tech scene. And so Greg's one of the founders of Baltimore Angels. So he's clearly an angel investor locally. Everybody wants to get to meet Greg. He's one of the busiest people on the planet. So I'm trying for months to get a meeting with this guy. Can't get a meeting with him. But then I ended up getting into the first class of Accelerate Baltimore, and he was a mentor. So then I sent him emails like, hey, I'm in Accelerate Baltimore. You're a mentor. We should have a meeting. That's how I got my first meeting with Greg. And that was the day he enlightened me about customer acquisition. And that's where the idea of using Twitter to find customers came about.
That's wild. I mean, I remember those conversations vividly, and I remember that first class of Accelerate Baltimore. Wow. I'm getting flooded with awesome memories of just the last 8-9 years. And now, just to put it in context, today, how many Twitter followers do you have?
So I've been on Twitter since like 2010. And until last June, I had 2,500 followers. Today, I have like 32,000.
Yeah.
So the Twitter thing's been kind of cool.
We're going to talk about it too, for sure. You've got a great voice and a great following and great support, and you're always putting out such really good stuff.
I appreciate that.
And I love it. I love doing it. So let's talk a little bit about, we talked about your journey. We talked about, your technical expertise and your journey into entrepreneurship. You go through Given to, I guess you guys decide to sunset that at some point. When do you make that choice as a founder? I'm just curious, because, it happens all the time.
It was a weird thing, because the way it happened was we had been working on this company for like 4.5 years. We had a pivot, and we were starting to get some traction, but the team was pretty burnt out. Yeah. And so one of my co-founders was like, hey, man, I think I want to change the scenery, do something different. It's like, okay. But in the process of that happening, one of our customers kind of reached out to us and like, hey, guys, what's going on? We really like this. And so then the conversation around, well, you could buy it if you want.
Absolutely.
And so we were able to sell off the IP to a Fortune 100 company, and that was a nice little windfall.
That's a good win.
Nice little windfall. But right after that, I jumped right into another startup. And so
that's what we call folks like catching the bug, for
yes,
sure.
catching the bug. So I started this company, RareBreed. I put a new team together.
That's right.
Put a whole new team together, raised some small angel money, and went to an accelerator in Philadelphia and like made it all happen in like the span of 6 weeks.
Wow.
Like it happened like lightning fast because like at that point, like the first company, I had no clue what was going on.
Right.
For the second company, I knew everything. I knew everything. I knew everybody, had the connections, had the network, understood the strategies, and we were off and running.
You MVP'd that quickly, huh?
Well, it wasn't even MVP. It was just what happened was I put together a list of potential customers and basically did a cold email campaign through them, and I signed up 120 customers pre-product willing to pay $20 a month.
Validated it.
So I validated, and I'm like, cool, let's go run with
Love it.
And then we go to the accelerator, and mind you, this is like my third accelerator. I've gotten used to this experience. It's me and two other grown men living in a 1-bedroom loft in West Philadelphia, and one of my co-founders of that company disappeared 2 months into the accelerator. My CTO literally like just disappeared off the face of the earth. Like, I mean, like one day we didn't see him and I didn't talk to him again for 2 years.
Wow.
That unfortunately tanked our product.
Kind of a critical position.
And that company was never able to get back off the ground. And so ended up just letting that one die off and basically took a 6-month sabbatical. Well, not really a sabbatical. I took 6 months and didn't want to leave my house and talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Having a startup fail is a horrible feeling.
That was RareBreed, said?
Yeah, that was
I
RareBreed.
remember that. That was. And so what was that from inception to wrap up? It was quick.
That was like, I mean, we didn't officially close up for like a year and a half, but like I was probably mentally checked out after about the first year. It's just like.
So you're like, you're going through, this entrepreneurial journey as a developer. You're hustling. You go through Give and To. You have the stint with RareBreed. You take a sabbatical. Mac, clear your head, and then you go and instead of doing a third, you go over to Tedco.
No, before
Not
that.
After that?
No, I went to a marketing firm after that.
Okay, marketing firm after that.
And so I go to this marketing
Spend time
firm.
there.
And the reason I went to the marketing firm is because they originally hired me to be an entrepreneur. My job was to be the head of internal products.
Okay.
So the CEO had a bunch of ideas of products he wanted to bring to market. I was like, perfect. I can build stuff and get a steady paycheck. That works out. I ended up just leading a team of junior front-end developers, which was not my goal, building e-commerce websites.
Gotcha.
Like, that wasn't the plan. And so after being there for a year, the company I worked for actually ended up getting a client I didn't agree with ethically, and so I quit. And when I quit on a Friday. And the very next Monday, I got an email saying that Tedco, the Maryland Technology Development Corporation, was hiring. And, Tedco, for those who don't know, is essentially like the investment arm for the state of Maryland. They get $21 million annually off of the state's balance sheet to deploy capital to early stage companies based here in Maryland. And so I had a mentor, Neil Davis, who we both know.
Love Neil.
Who worked
Hey, Neil,
there.
he's watching, I'm sure.
I'm sure he is. So I remember being in the office and I picked up my phone and I called Neil. I was like, hey, Neil, you think I'd have a shot? I don't really have a VC background, but I think I could do this.
Yeah.
And Neil was like, it's worth it. You giving it a shot. We're trying to do some things different over here. Just put your name in the hat. That was all I needed to hear.
That's all you needed to hear.
Neil said, give it a shot. So I gave it a shot. And 4 months later, they hired me and I was on the seed investment team.
Love it. I remember that vividly. And then you were in the seed investment team for how long before you started to put together the concept for what is now the Builders Fund, which we could talk about too, because I remember we've been connected the whole time.
So it was interesting during my hiring process. So before Tedco hired me, they had gone through this process of doing an internal review and realized they hadn't done as well investing in Black-led startups. And what they saw was Black-led startups got funded at the same rate as everybody else, but they weren't applying as much. And so they were going through this discovery process of talking to the community. And one of the things that came out was a lot of founders complained that they lacked access to friends and family capital to compete for seed funding at Tedco. And so I get on staff and we're having conversations about this internally. A lot of people are talking about it, but we hadn't really come to a decision on how we could what we could do to try and change it.
Yeah.
And so I'm probably like less than 6 months in, and I was actually having breakfast with a friend of mine, Calvin Young, who at the time worked at Harbor Bank.
Yeah.
And I just mentioned to him I had this idea of I'm thinking about proposing a pre-seed fund at Tedco. I think I want to give, Black entrepreneurs $40K each, trying to, institutionalize friends and family. I was like, do you think the Harbor Bank CDC might be interested in, partnering on this? And Cal was like, I think we could. Let me talk to my boss about it. A week later, I talked to John Lewis over at Harbor Bank. He said, yeah, let's do this. And then the very next week, I gave my proposals to the folks at TEDCO. And imagine their surprise when they see that there's a bank in the proposal. And they're like, is this aspirational? What's going on? I was like, no, they've already agreed. And everybody's looking at me like I got two heads. Like, well, first of all, you're not allowed to do deals on behalf of the state of Maryland, Mac. But this is really intriguing. Let's go down the path. And so first year,
you came with a full solution.
Came with a full solution, and I made it, and I set it up to mirror some of the other products and all some of the other funds we already had.
Right.
So I tried to make it set up so that it looked and felt like what we did. And so they eventually said, sure, we can do this. But then they told me that they couldn't pay me to run that because they were paying me to be on the seed investment team. So they told me I had to do both. And
so you were doing the seed and the builder fund.
I did both of them for about 7 or 8 months.
Talk about how what the builder fund in its early days, and how much was it, and what were you able to put together on that, and what kind of investments were you doing then? And you were learning, obviously, the investment world at this point.
Yeah.
As you've come out of the journey of the entrepreneurship, now you're deep in at TEDCO, proposing new solutions, which are important ones, and doing deals.
Yes. So
talk to me about that.
So, every entrepreneur thinks that they can be an investor, right? Like the moment you're an entrepreneur, you start talking to VCs and investors, like, I can do this. There's a lot more to it than just that.
Yes, it is.
You get to learn some stuff the hard way. But, I put the proposal together, started running the program, made it as inclusive as we could. And the goal was to make 10 investments. So we got $400,000. So basically the way it was set was TEDCO would do $20K each in each company, and Harbor Bank would do the other 20.
Okay.
And so we ended up doing 9 just because of the timing and, companies fall through due diligence. But I'm happy to say of those first 9, 6 of them are still around.
That's great.
And every single one of them's every single one of those 6 have raised follow-on funding. One of them's actually in the process of raising a Series A. One's raising a Seed Plus right now.
And Builder Fund is how many years old?
So Builder Fund, so I'm talking about the pilot we did.
The pilot.
And that was in 2017.
Okay.
That was from
Those are those first 9 deals.
Those are the first 9.
You said 6 of them.
6 of them are still around.
That's awesome.
All of them have raised follow-on funding.
And
3 of them, have raised funding recently.
Awesome.
So excited for like the early traction we had there. And so after we did the pilot, the very next year we gave it the name the Builder Fund, and we increased the designation to women and all minority groups. Did another 9 investments, and then in 2019. My team went in front of the legislative session. The legislators here argued to make it a long-term fund, and so they awarded for starting in FY20 $1 million to make it a long-term fund in the state. It was the first and only state-backed pre-seed fund for women and minorities in the country, and it's something that I'm really proud of, and it's still around today.
Absolutely, and it's an important part of TEDCO. It's an important part of the ecosystem here in Maryland, and man, it's great to hear that the whole journey of and how you advocated, came up with a solution with financial backing, all the way through down to hitting the legislative session and getting the state to commit, because it's super important, and we're going to talk more about it.
Right.
So let's talk about. We're going to get to RareBreed because I love the thesis, I love the manifesto. We're going to get into it. But like this market that we're in right now, I mean, the general partner, Scott Garber, who's the GP of Early Light Ventures, sent out a market commentary yesterday that I always love to read his comments. We're in a really kind of crazy market right now from an investing standpoint. I would say, I think most people would agree with that. Valuations are crazy. All the funds seem to be getting pushed downstream. The economics just don't work. I mean, I've got some comments here. Companies that would have recapped or folded in 2020 are raising robust rounds at higher valuations. That would have recapped or folded are raising robust rounds at higher valuations. Pre-revenue and very early companies are demanding and getting $10 to $25 million pre-money valuations or caps without any defensible technology, any unfair advantages, or real revenue pathways. Funds are now moving at least 1 to 2 stages earlier than their thesis, right? Including many longstanding funds that now have completely unaligned risk models. Low failure rates, lower upsides, kind of now playing Powerball, as Scott says. And of course, uh, as we discussed last week with the great panel, I mean, funding is still not being distributed equitably at all. Crazy stats from last week: 2.2% of the VC funding in 2020 went to women, and 0.64 went to Black and Latino women. I mean, it's just we got a lot of work to do there. So I am curious about, you're at Tedco, and you start getting this vision for what is now RareBreed. I know we were talking about it early on. I knew you were going to pull the trigger. What compelled you to create RareBreed Ventures?
So it's two founders that changed my life.
Okay.
First one's a woman based here in Baltimore who I met a few years ago, who told me she had an idea for this amazing technology. There's an idea in the beauty space, disrupting something that hasn't had innovation in our lifetime, something incredible. And so I started helping and mentoring this woman, trying to support her. Nobody cared because she was too early. She didn't have a prototype. People didn't believe in the market. And I couldn't even get her funding at Tedco. And so after 3 years of having every door shut in her face, she calls me and tells me she's becoming a surrogate mother to raise capital to build out her prototype.
Man.
And I became really frustrated because I couldn't think of a fund that I could have worked at and made that investment. And so that was the beginning of like, okay, I need to start a fund. Because originally the goal was to go, build my career at Tedco and then go get a job at a fund, make good money. But no, that was the beginning of the idea of like, okay, I need to do this. And then in June of last year, I started tweeting more. And, we talked about the Twitter thing. And, I'm having entrepreneurs reach out to me. And there's this one founder based in Dallas, Texas, creating a company called RoboAmp. And basically what it does is it helps websites load faster. As somebody who used to work at a marketing firm that specialized in e-commerce, like, that is the holy grail. The idea that you can get this website to load faster so I don't have as high of a drop-off, that is important. And I'm talking to this founder, and he's telling me how he's got revenue, he's got some big contracts and a huge channel partner, and that he's raising a little bit of capital on a really low valuation because nobody's willing to talk to him. Why? Because he's a Latin guy in Dallas, Texas. And so I decided I was going to put an SPV together, special purpose vehicle, to make a one-off investment.
Yep.
Started talking to some folks about it, and I had one of my advisors say, hey, Mac, I don't want to invest in this company. I want to invest in every company you find. So here's a check and go raise a fund. And I was like, well, I don't want to raise a fund. It's a pandemic going on. It's a lot of crazy, like, raising funds are hard. Like, I don't even know if I can actually do this.
Yep.
He was like, well, if you want this money, this is what you're going to do. And I was like, all right, I guess I'm going to try to raise a fund. And so
That's it.
That was just it.
I mean, so let me ask you, so why is it important to support Black founders, especially in the current world that we're living in today?
The reason why it's important, one, is we know that diversity of thought and diversity of experience leads to solving a diverse set of problems. There's a lot of problems in our country that aren't being solved because the individuals who are making most of the solutions aren't, like, those problems don't affect them.
Yeah.
Right? The other thing is there's this chicken and egg problem that we have in the investing world, the same thing entrepreneurs have, right?
Yeah.
Whereas there's no historical data that shows investing in Black and brown founders leads to outsized returns. But that's also because we haven't given money to Black and brown founders for so long.
Yeah.
And so now when you're making the argument like, hey, I want to invest in this strategy, well, there's no data that supports that you get there's data to support why you should do it. There isn't data to support how you get the financial returns, but it's this catch-22 of like, well, we can't show we can get financial returns until we back enough to show that it's possible. And so
we're building that now.
So we're building that now. So it's important for us to be pushing it now. But even again, the numbers you just read, those are the same numbers that have been around since when I started my first company. Like,
it's bad, and there's a lot of work to be done. And so I love the thesis too. And I also just feel like I'd be remiss not to ask you about what you posted on Twitter last night. I'm very sorry that it happened to you. I know it's scary. I don't know it's scary, but that's a scary thing, and I feel the need to make sure that we discuss it because, as I mentioned to you, this is an important dialogue that we need to have. So can you tell us what happened?
Yeah, so last night, while being frustrated, I put out a Twitter storm, basically just saying how I was feeling. I was coming home last night, and I had two cops come up behind me, and one of them actually had his lights off, just had his parking lights on, has brake lights on, but didn't have his regular headlights on, and got right up on my bumper, right? Wow. And I knew what he was trying to do was to get me to speed up so he could pull me over. The only reason I know that's because this has happened to me before. And I started freaking out. My heart started pounding. I'm like 10 and 2, just like trying to calm down. I want to pull over, but I'm afraid if I stop, they'll pull me over. I want to speed up, but I can't speed up because I know they'll pull me over. Then I'm afraid that, like, if I stay at this rate, is he going to pull me over because I'm not letting him go by, right? So, like, I'm just freaking out, and I'm scared, and I was just mad at myself. And this happens every time this happens where, like, I feel like I'm about to have this panic attack. My heart won't come down. I'm just all upset. And you know, some people are like, well, you know, is this because of recent events? It's not even because of recent events. Like, growing up in Baltimore, I've had a lot of run-ins with cops, especially when I was younger. You know, when I was in college, I got my jaw broken by police officers. Why? Because a friend of mine was hanging out with his girlfriend, who was white, in a white part of town, and they were laughing and joking, and the cops came over to stop the group of black guys from harassing group of white girls. You know, first time I ever had a gun held at me was by a cop when I was 13, you know, hanging with some friends coming back from basketball court. Right? You know, having been stopped and frisked. But like, it's just all these things, and every time, the first thing that goes through my mind is, what do I have to do to stay alive in this moment? And that is the fear that runs through me. Like, every time a police officer comes behind me, pulls beside me, you know, it's just this inherent fear that I want to get over because, like, most of my interactions with cops later in my life have been fine, right? And haven't been terrible. You know, it's been years since I've been, like, hit by a police officer, but also know, like, it can happen at any moment. That's the fear.
And I mean, I'm very sorry that happened to you. And I was, but you know, the response to your story, you know, really shows us how big of a problem this is, and the one that we're facing today. How often it happens, even when people saying it happened to them yesterday too. I mean, it's incredible. So why is it so important to address our problems with race and race inequity that continues to show that we have a growing problem in our country?
Because we claim to be the land of the free. We claim to be the country where you can have religious freedoms and we're the land of freedom. But you have whole groups of people in this country who don't feel free. And so we are the country of the ideals that we say we are, and we need to change. Yeah. Or we just need to acknowledge, like, hey, we're just not the country that we claim to be, right? Like which is it? I like to hope that we are, and there's a lot of people who are working towards that. But I mean, we just saw what happened in Georgia where they're trying to change voting laws. Like, crazy. They're making it illegal to give people water standing in line to go vote.
It's ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous.
That's amazing. That's like just the idea that, like, you're telling me it's illegal for me to give somebody water. Or, you know, the gentleman in Minnesota who got pulled over because he had an air freshener hanging up. And it's legal for the cops to pull you over for having an air freshener hanging up. Like these things that happen, but it's important for us to address them because I don't want my grandchildren to have to go through and feel the way I did. You know, the same way my father and my grandfather didn't want me to go through what they did. And life has progressively gotten better, but the incremental steps haven't been enough.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would love to say I won't want my children to have these issues, but, like, I don't have the faith that that's going to happen in that time frame. So I have to think about my grandchildren and beyond. And so that's why it's important.
I appreciate you sharing the stories and, you know, just being transparent. And I think the one thing that you said last night when I read your tweets were, you know, you're doing this because not enough people talk about this stuff. And it's real and it's happening and it needs to change. And I love that you are taking an initiative, and you always have, to produce the change that needs to happen. And so I want to talk about, you know, I wanted to tee up RareBreed. I appreciate you sharing the story of your experience, and, you know, it's heart-wrenching. But let's talk about how you're addressing, you know, on the funding side with RareBreed. I've got your manifesto here. And so which you can find at rarebreed.vc. And I encourage everyone who's watching to go check out Mac's website, and also to become an LP, of course.
Yes.
You just got some wires in here before the, which is
We
awesome.
got some wires in while we were waiting for the start show.
Love that. Raising money on the fly right here. Okay, number one, you can find amazing startups anywhere in the world. There are amazing entrepreneurs everywhere. Great ideas, building dope companies, not just in Silicon Valley, New York, or Boston.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's easy to figure out when you figure, like, I started my investing journey investing in companies only in the state of Maryland. You know, we're able to find great companies here. Like,
Yeah, because with Tedco,
that's what
Maryland.
we're doing. But here's a little known fact. Tedco was the first investor in Squarespace. Just 3 guys from University of Maryland. Right? So, yeah, dope companies come from everywhere.
Wow. Okay. Some of these entrepreneurs are building products and serving communities that many traditional VCs do not understand or are not willing to understand. This leads to many missed opportunities to fund great companies. Talk to us about that. You're basically saying here that, they're not willing to look at certain markets, or I know we're talking about folks that, may not even speak the language, or just maybe it's just geographical. I mean, tell me what.
There's a lot of things that go into it, but I talked about the woman became a surrogate mother because the product she was building was in the hair and beauty space, and it's a space that a lot of traditional VCs aren't going to understand.
Right.
Another example, we invested in a company called Rebundle. It's 3 black women out of St. Louis where they're making plant-based biodegradable braiding hair.
Wow.
Why? Because most synthetic braiding hair is made out of plastic. You're basically putting PVC in your head.
Chemicals.
That can be toxic and cause irritation, inflammation. Most investors aren't going to understand that story. Yeah. And it was interesting. I actually I do an update to my LPs when we invest in companies, and in the update, I put up a couple tweets of women who were showing how big of a problem this is, how it's impacted their lives. I don't know if ever, and that's having kind of a cultural competency when you're looking at a company like that, and then understanding how that company can get to $1 billion valuation. But I understand that because these are companies geared towards black hair care and beauty, but there's companies like this across different kind of cultural barriers where if you have that cultural competency on your team, you're going to learn some stuff. We invested in a Gen Z dating app that I didn't get. I'm not Gen Z, but I have 3 Gen Zers on my team. Yep. And they're all telling me how great of an app it is. And so, like, if I don't have them on my team for that diversity of thought, I probably don't make that investment.
Yeah. Understanding, expanding your horizons, surrounding yourself with good people, and being aware of the world that you're living in around you and the people that are in it. Many VCs focus so much on getting deal flow from traditional sources that they don't take the time to look beyond those circles. This also leads to missed opportunities to fund great companies. Talk to us about that. It's just basically.
Yeah, I mean, it was again, a lot of these learnings come from my time at Tedco. Most VCs stay within the innovation community. They go to the incubators, the accelerators, other VCs in their network, and they may or may not take in cold emails and stuff like that. But I also like to go through the small business community because what I've learned is business owners know business owners. If I go talk to a chamber of commerce, if I go talk at the Urban League or any of these big meetups, there's probably almost nobody in the audience who makes sense for us to fund. And it's probably most people in the audience the first time they're ever hearing about venture capital. Right. So one, getting access and helping people understand that this exists. But there's always 2 or 3 people in that audience who introduce me to a friend of theirs who's working on this app, or they got a cousin who's doing something, who might be building something really cool, who don't even consider themselves an entrepreneur or a tech entrepreneur. And that's where you find these hidden gems,
There's
right?
the gem, right? Diamonds in the rough.
And, and then also, I do a lot of speaking at a lot of the off the beaten path accelerators, I'd like to talk about like Black Girl Ventures.
Yep.
I love what Shelly Bell and what her team is doing.
Love it.
I've spoken at Velocity, which is the big accelerator in Birmingham, Alabama, because who else is going to Birmingham, Alabama? Those are the places where you find cool things. I mean,
there's tertiary, secondary, tertiary markets that no one's looking at. And, I think one of the things that we've all discovered due to the pandemic is, man, everything's, you can connect with anybody anywhere.
And the crazy part is we've had this technology to do this for so long.
Exactly.
But now it's the thing. So it's going to be interesting if we keep this up. I hope it does. But
It's wild. I mean, just from the personal experience with the Baltimore Angels, I mean, we had everything was done in person, shaking hands, meeting the founders. I did not know how this was going to turn out like everybody else, and I was blown away that we were able to do. We did 4 deals last year. A couple of them were follow-ons, and it's working. You can record the session. Everyone, you can ask comments. It's so efficient. Everyone just tunes in from their desk.
yes.
It is different though. It's got to be different because I am like you, very much a people person. So it's interesting when you're partying with dollars and putting them into a company with somebody you've never met before in person. But it's happening.
It is
and
happening.
I can see it happening for.
It's also amazing to see like how close you can get to people that you've never met in person.
True.
Some of my founders, like we text all the time, we talk all the time. Still never met them yet.
I mean, yeah. It's amazing. I mean, I'm working at Olive now as managing partner of Olive Ventures, and we've gone through an incredible growth phase, and a large portion of the company has never ever met each other before. It's a wild dynamic, but it's wild that we're finally leveraging these tools to also make some things more efficient, because
Right.
I think you'd agree with me, like things are not going back to the way they were. No way.
Like I can have 20 meetings in a day with people all across the globe.
Exactly.
Any other time, that's not happening.
So let's talk about like this particular skill set, because RareBreed is a pre-seed stage. So investing in pre-seed stage companies, this is right off your manifesto, is a skill and requires a lot of conviction. You cannot use the traditional metrics to evaluate a company or, more importantly, the founders themselves.
I mean, when you're talking pre-seed,
I mean, and it just, pre-seed is like, as early as early.
yeah, pre-seed today is all over the place. Like a pre-seed company could be anywhere from, an idea on a napkin to, 25,000 monthly recurring. It just all depends. But the thing is, there are going to be certain companies and certain industries that you're going to stay fairly traditional to. You're going to want to see more traction. But you're going to find companies doing really interesting, unusual things that are really early. And you got to kind of, sometimes it's more than just the numbers, right? So one of the companies we invested in, Buffalo Market, they're a grocery delivery company, right? And they had a pivot. They were doing some decent revenue, but it was still early. Weren't sure where this was going to go. It's kind of a crowded space. But the founder, Adam, is one of the most incredible people I've ever met. Right? Like he's one of those founders who's like a force in nature where like just random things would happen. People would just give him stuff. Right? People just come around him and just do things. He has a co-founder who's not the most like hands-on kind of a founder, right? He's a guy that doesn't do a whole lot of physical labor. And like one day he's like, yeah, we spent the weekend rearranging our warehouse because I figured out we could make it more efficient. I was like, well, who did it with you? He's like, oh, me and my co-founder. I was like, you got him to do this with you? He was like, yeah, of course. Like, what else? This is the team. We got to do it. Like, I never saw that coming. But like those little things tell you something about somebody, right?
Yep.
That's not one of the fastest growing companies in our portfolio.
Wow.
But that company,
You saw it happening in real time with the founder, the dynamics, the way they approach things, the way they solved problems, the way and just saw it. You're investing in people at this point,
Now, granted, his numbers kept growing. They keep growing at the pace they're going. We're going to be just fine.
We're going to be just fine.
But the reason why they were growing is because of how unique of a founder he was. And that's where the bet is.
That's awesome. So sometimes founders at the pre-seed stage aren't as polished, don't know all the VC lingo, don't have an amazing network, or don't know how to construct a pitch. Still, they are just as amazing founders who have raised tons of money and have deep networks. So we talked a little bit about that before, but
yeah. So this actually came from an interaction that we had with one founder where there was this woman who was pitching us, and I had already talked to her before, and I warned everybody, like, look, she's going to use her deck as a crutch. And it's just because she's not used to pitching, but it's okay. And she started pitching, a member of my team was getting kind of flustered. He's like, is she really ready? I don't know. I was like, look, just calm down, let her get there. And it took us about 40 minutes to get there, but about 40 minutes in, he's like, oh my God, I get it. He's like, this could be incredible. But traditionally, he might have just cut her off and then 30 minutes been like, all right, go on about your day, because he wasn't giving her the time to get there. And that's just because it had nothing to do with her skill. It had everything to do with just how comfortable she was.
I mean, it's intimidating, right? It's a very intimidating experience for
Absolutely.
founders to go and pitch their idea to people who are going to potentially give them money in a in a conference room or wherever. That's somewhere they've never been. It's very intimidating. But again, giving people time, hear the story. You're saying that a lot of people would just have formed an opinion and not giving that person a chance.
Yeah.
And that is another one of your manifesto. All there is that $50,000 is enough to get great founders started, but not enough for them to fully execute to get to their next level. They still need to pitch to angel investors, go to pitch competitions, join accelerators, and do anything and everything they can do to get additional funding along the way.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that $50,000 number. And
now that comes from my time with the Builder Fund at Tedco. We were doing first 40, then 50,000. And what we saw was it was enough to get companies moving, get them doing stuff. But it wasn't enough for them to get to the next round of funding in 12 to 18 months, which is, as a VC, that should be where your goal is, right? Mm-hmm. But every founder that we had that leveraged our money to raise anywhere from 250 to 500, mm-hmm. all of them raised money in 12 to 18 months. And so that's why our target dollar amount of RareBreed is 250, because that's enough money where you can execute well enough on your strategy that in 12 to 18 months you should be able to raise more capital.
Absolutely. And you should be able to have the metrics behind you to say, this is warrant more gas in the tank, let's go faster.
And so, along with the help of the RareBreed team, supporting you along the way, we should be able to help you get into some of those rooms and do some of those things so that your growth metrics hit what they need to hit. And then I can introduce you to all the VCs I know.
It's the way it's done. You open your networks to your portfolio companies, good things are going to happen.
That's right.
We're picking up a theme on this networking stuff, right? That's how we met.
Yes.
It was hustling. Just got to go find investors, came to a panel, got engaged in the community, got the support. Amazing entrepreneurs with truly original and unique products serving industries that haven't had innovation in years do exist.
Yes. That's why we did Rebundle, like plant-based biodegradable braiding hair. Braiding hair has been the same way since I've been a kid, right? So, let's get behind something like that. Or a company that we invested in, one of our New York-based companies called Thousandfeld. They make recyclable sneakers that are super comfortable and look and feel like any other pair of leather sneakers. I'm actually wearing mine right now.
Check those out.
Amazing founders who care a lot about the circular economy. Yep. So really bullish on sustainability and circular economy these days.
So straight off the site, there are two types of founders that get us excited. Mm-hmm. Those who have thought a lot about and executed on customer acquisition, and those building products and markets that are often overlooked. Yeah. These founders are out-of-the-box thinkers, which is critical to success. I love it. And making pre-seed investments, you write fairly small checks relative to all of venture capital, but even small checks are life-changing for some entrepreneurs, which can lead to amazing returns. Yeah. I mean, that's amazing.
On average, to get a unicorn, you're going to raise $89 million. But that first 250 to 500K is what gets you on the pathway there.
Gets you on the pathway, yeah. So how many deals have you done with RareBreed so far? I mean, you're rocking it.
We got 13 so far.
13 companies in the RareBreed portfolio. Yes. Let's talk about geography, because I know, the world is your oyster, right? Yes.
So 61% of our companies are outside of the major tech hubs.
61%.
61. So we got Maryland, we got St. Louis, we got Toronto.
First international.
Yeah, we got one international company. We got Minneapolis, Portland. I'm missing one, but they'll come to it.
That's wild. And you got, I know, I get those updates when you send them. I love how you do that. A little bit about the company, little context, relevance, and the why is always great.
Yes.
Let's talk about a couple of them. Just, so talk to us about Elite Gaming Live. So this is an after-school esports company?
Yes.
For grades 3 to 12 that incorporates STEM education.
Yes, after-school esports where kids get points for playing video games and more points for doing online educational modules. I met Kerwin early on in the Builder Fund at a Village Capital event in D.C. He had recently moved to the East Coast from Indiana, where he's originally from and where he originally started the company.
Yep.
And he had 10 schools and trying to expand to the East Coast. And as soon as he told me what he was doing, I got it. And I was like, oh, we're going to figure out a way to get you some money. So ended up getting him money through the Builder Fund twice. And today he's got close to over 100 schools. He's raised a seed round. The impact that his company makes on these children, their lives, because video games are like the great equalizer.
100%.
Any and everybody can play them. And so you see children of all demographics, all age range, all genders, all races, all everything. You see students with disabilities, students on the cognitive spectrum, all being part of teams and working together. It's an amazing process to see. And that was the thing for me. I got it, and I saw the vision. And, to the point about what I said about being value add, one of their educational modules on cloud engineering sponsored by AWS, right? That's an introduction that came through me and through some people, and actually through a former Baltimore Angel who works at AWS, Michael Lombardi.
I know who you're talking about. I love Michael.
And that's led to him having that partnership. But I mean, that's an amazing program, and it's ran by a black guy who's now based here in Baltimore.
I remember learning a little bit about it too, because the ed tech, the ed tech industry is, it's challenging to sell into school systems. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, what I learned about them is you guys get below the threshold of the procurement, so you can do it at the school level.
You do it very rapidly.
So Rebundle is the first company to produce non-toxic, biodegradable, plant-based braiding hair. We talked about that. That sounds like something, complete. All of these are obviously fit your thesis 100% and your manifesto, and just, discovering things that just aren't in front of people most of the time. Main Street, one of the fastest growing companies in the portfolio, helps businesses find and claim tax credits they never heard of. This one is interesting. So
Main Street's amazing. The founder's a 3-time founder. He's had multiple very large exits.
Okay.
This is a white guy in San Jose, right? So everybody's like, Mac, why would you do this? Well, one, my job is to return capital to my LPs, and they have the chance to be one of the fastest growing companies one of the fastest companies to 100 million ARR in American history. So there's some opportunity.
There's a good bet there.
There's a bet to be made there. But the other thing is, Doug himself, the CEO, cares very much so about Main Street businesses.
Yeah.
And the larger vision is actually not just helping startups find these tax credits, but these everyday businesses find these tax credits. So we're talking about helping restaurants, helping, those neighborhood businesses that need extra cash get non-dilutive capital that the government has already set aside for them.
That's awesome.
That is a mission we can get behind, and
that is a mission we can get behind.
And basically their business model is we give entrepreneurs free money. Like that's the greatest business model I've ever heard of.
Business model. But that's amazing. But again, they're addressing something that, again, is actually right in front of all of us.
Right.
But is so hard to navigate in the sense of people may not know where to go, right? And becoming aware of these programs and actually bundling them that's awesome. And then finally, let's talk about Thousand Fell. Mm-hmm. So this is the one this is the shoes you're wearing?
The shoes I'm wearing, yeah. So they're recyclable shoes. They're basically most of the materials used on the shoes are plant-based. And, their goal is to really change the way textiles are done here in the country. And the cool part about it is after you worn the shoes out, you can send them back, and they'll send you $20 back for recycling them.
It's almost as good as giving founders free money.
Right. You get a 20% rebate just for turning your shoes back in, and then they'll cut them up and turn them into new shoes again. So, it's an amazing company. I love the founders. They understood the shoe business inside and out. And their bigger vision is way bigger than just these shoes.
Okay. So they want to take this and scale it across.
There's a lot of stuff they want to do.
There's
a lot of stuff they want to do. And so that's what got us really excited and got us really bullish about them. But, getting the
big vision.
Big visions are always great.
Always good. How much time we got here? I think we're just wrapping up here for 5 minutes. All right, cool. Well, I'm curious now. Let's talk about your team, because as someone who's actively building one right now, and do you say this cultural awareness? What does your team look like at RareBreed?
So my team is interesting because I'm a solo GP. I'm the only full-time person.
Yeah.
But I have 6 individuals who work with me who all came to the company like through these really weird ways, and like it was never a thing where I was looking for a team. It just happened. So I have a venture partner, Jonathan Kroll. He works at Sparrow Ventures, a Series A firm in the Valley.
Okay.
And before that, he worked at Andreessen Horowitz. And
That's awesome.
he's one of the people that I met off of Twitter, and like we kept meeting and we kept talking. He sourced a deal for me, and we kept working through deals together. And one day I was like, "Hey, you want to just work on this together?" He was like, "I would love to."
That's
right?
Awesome.
I have 2 junior associates, Amani and Ime. Ime's getting his master's in engineering at Morgan State. He's part of the HBCU VC program, fellowship program.
That's great.
He's been an intern at Intel Capital. Like that, he's one of the most well-connected young people I know. Amani was getting his MBA at Georgetown. He now runs partnerships at Main Street. Go figure.
Working the portfolio impact. I love it.
Yeah, and he's he had worked on the VC side. He had worked on the LP side. Another hungry gentleman looking to break in.
Bench.
And then I have 3 young ladies who all came to me separately, just wanting to support. And I was giving them little projects here and there. And at one point, I just introduced them all to each other. Next thing I know, they started having secret meetings. They started sending me emails, telling me the stuff they needed me to do for them. And so that's Margaret, Rapalou, and Janine. Janine's actually a data scientist based in Canada. Rapalou is a sales specialist and BD specialist at Square. And Margaret's getting her executive MBA at NYU. All 3 amazing, talented young
awesome.
Black women who just want to be a part of RareBreed and get into the venture space. And I don't pay any of these people.
But that's awesome, though. I mean, you're giving them such a great opportunity. I mean,
they're giving me a great opportunity. They're helping me.
Yeah, I mean, but they are helping you. Yes, I'm sorry, but you know what I mean. You built the bench. Is really where I was going with this. Is like you built a great bench of people that are getting behind your mission for you. What do you do in terms of portfolio impact versus investing?
So
in terms of time, how do you spend that with 13 portfolio companies? You got various time zones spread across.
It's a lot.
It's just, I mean, you're working 24/7. I mean,
it can be a lot. Raising capital, sourcing deals, deploying capital, portfolio support. But thankfully, I do have that team.
Yeah.
And it's almost become a thing where like they're almost like the platform team. Where like last week, one of our companies needs some help. 3 of them just went to go work for that company for the week. That's awesome. Just basically deployed three employees. Like, hey, y'all 3 go help them get this set up. Right?
That is so important to have that support.
And then we do. I spend like maybe an hour or 2 every day where I'm talking to another company in the portfolio, just going through strategic planning, talking through things, seeing where they're at, what they need help with, all those things, right?
All those things.
And then we got a couple companies in our portfolio that are just moving, right? They just hit me up when they need an introduction,
Yep.
or when they're ready for more money, right? So
it sounds like you've got an incredible team, a bench of talent around you that you can not only you have a great way to sourcing deals. I've seen it. I've seen the investments. We've talked about them. You've got a great bench of people that are in your vision and helping you execute this. And you're going at a pace that is, I mean, this is October, and it is April.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're just rolling. So I'm so proud of you. I think we're coming up on time.
Mm-hmm.
It's been an amazing pleasure, Mac, to just seen you through the journey over the last 9 years. Is all the things we talked about, all the way up to being a managing partner of RareBreed Ventures,
Still crazy to me.
really important stuff. And I also want to thank you for taking an hour of your day out here to support FounderCity.com. To make sure we're talking and having good conversations about important things. This will be posted on our website, on our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to it. It's the Betamore YouTube channel. It'll be on FounderCity.com as well. I want to say thank you again, and I appreciate any closing thoughts or housekeeping? No, we're good to go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Mac. It's good to see you. And
thank you, Greg.
tune in for next week.
All right, y'all have a good one.
Have a good one.